Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is December 18th, 2024. It's the holiday season. Christmas and the New Year are upon us, so I know we're all very busy doing a lot of things that need to be done, but there's a lot going on in Iraq, and I think we're in a very good position for this to be the last Christmas season that we'll even be discussing this issue. In my opinion, based on the information I've been able to glean, it seems to me that January is the most likely time for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. It certainly could happen before that, although for reasons I've discussed on many calls, we don't want to see a reinstitution late in a quarter because taxes would be due early in the next quarter and the timing could get a little tricky. So January would be the optimum time for this to occur. Taxes wouldn't be due until April 15th. The currency would have time to appreciate and we could do the exchange as we see fit rather than being forced into an exchange in order to pay a hypothetical tax. And the reason I say hypothetical is because there's some discussion as to whether or not the tax of the Iraqi dinar will be ordinary income or cap gain. I think we can point to sections of the code that would suggest that it's cap gain, but absent explanation from the IRS on the subject, we have no choice but to pay the ordinary income tax and file for a refund, citing those sections of the code and publications that suggest it's cap gain. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself there. I think what we really need to be discussing is what's going on right now in Iraq and in this country, because the two are linked. Something else I've decided to do is I'm not going to bother to issue a disclaimer any longer. In the past, we've had disclaimers about purchase of the Iraqi dinar. I just think after 15 years of the disclaimer, I think it's pretty clear where we stand. And given where we are with the Iraqi dinar at the present time, I just don't want to waste my time with it. So it's the last time I even mentioned the disclaimer. One other thing I do want to mention before we get started is that I haven't really made up my mind about whether or not I will do a call on Christmas Eve. I'm leaning toward doing a short call. There is, of course, the possibility of something happening dramatically with regard to the Iraqi dinar between now and then. I don't think that'll be the case, but in the event it does happen, we most certainly will have a full call. But at present, I'm leaning toward a short call, wishing everyone a Merry Christmas and getting back to family and all of those things. So let's get into a little bit of discussion about what's going on in Iraq. This year, 2024, was the year of Prime Minister Soudani and, of course, the governor of the CBI, Alak. We've been through a lot this year. What we've been witnessing, in my opinion, is the re-implementation of the monetary reform protocol established by Dr. Shabibi over a decade ago. We've seen the end of the use of the USD in country in Iraq. Again, the monetary reforms directed by Shabibi/Alak mirror very closely Dr. Shabibi's plan. Prime Minister Soudani has repeatedly promised his citizens real purchasing power in 2024. And this leaves it down to a couple of weeks to fulfill that promise, although I would consider January to be the fulfillment of that promise. And as we speak, we're poised for the official deletion of the zeros and the release of the lower dinars. One of the things I can point to that we're in this position is the fact that, and as I said before, the United States, what's going on in this country is linked. at least financially, to what's going on in Iraq. But President-elect Trump, as one of his first acts, not to be unnoticed by dinarians and people that are following these currencies, was he placed a call to Soudani, and the report is that that was a rather lengthy conversation. So that tells me that Trump has made it abundantly clear that the U.S. Treasury is going to help Iraq with this final phase of its monetary reform. Iraq's making movements in a lot of areas, too. The recognition both regionally in the Middle East and globally as well. Iraq, for example, has been granted chairmanship of the Arab Investment Company. Now, this is a pan-Arab organization, joint stock company that invests in projects to rebuild infrastructure, to create investment opportunities in the Middle East. So that's very important, too. Now, in my humble opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think that the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar has already occurred. The reason I say that is I don't see how it's possible for Iraq to enter into currency swaps with other nations unless those nations have an understanding of what either the value of the Iraqi dinar is or a narrow parameter of where it's going to fall. We also have all of the international contracts that Iraq has entered into to rebuild their infrastructure. I've got to believe that there must be some memorandum of understanding because the U.S. Reserve, USD, that Iraq holds is not anywhere close to being able to fund some of the expenditures of their budget and fund these contracts. Therefore, in my opinion, all of these contracts have been entered into with an understanding that the Iraqi dinar will reinstitute and revalue, and they have a very good idea based on Basel IV compliance where that is going to fall. The Basel IV calculation, in my view, conservatively puts the dinar over $4. And so that's what we're looking at. Now, the Iraqi dinar is going to be the currency of the nation-state of Iraq. And in my opinion, it can be argued that it will be the strongest currency in the world for the simple reason that Iraq, per square mile, is the richest country in the world. Why do I say that? Well, we know that Iraq has the second largest known oil reserves in the Middle East. We also know that for whatever reason, Iraq has the sweetest crude, meaning their crude oil has the lowest sulfur content. Why is that important? Because it's much more easily refined. Why is it important that the oil be refined? Well, contrary to what most people think, only about a third of refined oil is used in the combustion engine. Fully two-thirds of it is used for the production of glass, plastics, textiles, pharmaceuticals, electronics, nanotechnologies. There is not enough wind and solar in the universe to produce the smartphone you're listening to today. But at the same token, while Iraq has the sweetest crude, meaning it has the lowest sulfur content, Iraq has some of the largest known sulfur reserves in the world. Well, why is that important? It's important because sulfur is what's necessary for the production of sulfuric acid, and sulfuric acid is an indispensable product for the production of all kinds of industrial applications and products. So Iraq seems to have it coming and going. Then there is the Fertile Crescent, which is the Tigris-Euphrates River Delta, which of course comprises most of Iraq. These are deposits of precious and industrial metals from the Caucasus Mountain Range in Iran, something else that probably really disturbs them. So not only are they rich in industrial and precious metals, rare earth metals, but because Iraq is a flat, arid country, it's also very easily mined. Then you can look at Iraq from a geopolitical standpoint. It is a buffer geographically between the Saudi/Sunni Arabs and the Iranian/Shia. It's a gateway between the East and the West. It's absolutely critical and indispensable for the consummation of the China Silk Road Initiative, which is a trade route tracking the old trade route of Marco Polo from the east to the west. There are reportedly over 100 contracts within Iraq based on the fact that its geographic location is critical for East, for West, for the Middle East as well. Then there is one other issue which is very seldom discussed but very important, and that is the issue of tourism. Because once the Iraqi dinar revalues and reinstitutes, they're going to be able to open up not only a lot more international trade, but they're going to be opening up tourism. And Iraq is a very historic and old nation. It's a very important nation, certainly in the history of the Middle East, but also for the world. So once the Iraqi dinar reinstitutes and revalues, tourism is going to pick up dramatically. One of the reasons Iraq is so important historically is because in their early days, their development was critical to the development, really even arguably, of the West. One of the most famous kings of the area, known at the time as Babylon, was Hammurabi, who reigned from roughly 1792 to 1750 BC. Hammurabi is known and respected historically because he was the creator of the first technical and complex written civil and criminal code. And many of the precepts of that code are embodied today in our own Constitution. So the nation is going to be very involved in tourism. Also, it's going to be a place where individuals will stop on their way further east and vice versa on their way further west. So things are looking very, very good for Iraq. So all things considered, for those of us that have had currencies, and when I look at our client list, we have people call and say, hey, I bought some Iraqi dinar a couple of months ago, and my friend, my relative told me that I ought to set up a trust, so I want to contact you. And then I have individuals that have had currencies for 2 years, for 5 years, for 10 years. We have a lot of clients that are actually United States military who purchased the currency when they were in Iraq, brought it back to the United States, stuck it in a sock drawer, and then all of a sudden they realize, you know what? This currency really is going to be worth something. It's taking a lot longer than I had anticipated, but the reward's going to be something. And there's something we need to understand about the Iraqi dinar. As some of you know, I was involved with the Kuwaiti dinar, and I purchased the Kuwaiti dinar in the 90s, early 90s, for about somewhere between 10 and 15 cents, and it revalued for, I think it was $3.46, as I recall. And that was a good day at the office. But what's happening with the Iraqi dinar is in such a historic time frame. We have Iraq that basically was destroyed by Saddam Hussein, who was removed. Their country was in shambles. The currency was placed in a program rate, meaning it was basically worthless. And as the country has slowly but methodically rebuilt itself, we've gone through something called Basel compliance. 1988, Basel began. It's a 5-phased process where we are transitioning from fiat currencies, currencies that are basically worth whatever the government says it's worth, irrespective of any other calculation, to Basel compliant, mean the value of a currency is based on the known natural resources in that country and the ability to bring those resources to market. So the Iraqi dinar is worth next to nothing. We purchase it, and at the time it was a speculative investment, but our thinking was, well, the downside is virtually negligible and the upside potentially huge. We've bought some other currencies too that haven't fared as well. But as Iraq has rebuilt itself, we've gone through these phases of Basel compliance. So you have a currency that you purchased that might have been worth 1/1500th of a dollar, which within the next 30 days could be worth north of $4. Do the math on that. Nothing like this has ever happened before. Nothing like this can ever happen again because of the very peculiar set of parallel circumstances that are occurring. And it should be happening, I really believe, in January. Now, everything might be set up. They might even, of course, the last thing I'd want is for them to pop on December 31st, which some people said would happen, so that technically Soudani can keep his promise. But, of course, if it happens on December 31st, we have to pay our taxes on January 15th. That means we have to go to the bank, we have to negotiate our exchange, we have to have sufficient liquidity to pay the tax. So that would be the worst scenario for us. But if it happens in January, I think we're in very, very good shape, and that's where this seems to be. Now, Trusts Unlimited very simply decided to market its trust to Dinarians for a number of reasons, but the most important reason is this. When an individual has an asset that they anticipate is going to increase substantially in value, it's a good idea to transfer that asset out of title and into trust in order to protect that asset from public scrutiny, to protect that asset from civil litigation, and to substantially reduce the potential tax implications to you personally. So very briefly, what our trust package does, by establishing this trust package, you will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. No one will know your net worth or what you possess. Second, the trust will allow you to avoid IRS scrutiny. Why? Because all of the business transactions are occurring within the trust. You are merely the beneficiary of the benefits of those business transactions. In addition, the IRS basically tries to avoid the audit of sophisticated trusts with the understanding and the belief that an individual that possesses a very sophisticated trust package probably has very sophisticated legal representation. And the IRS likes to go after the low-hanging fruit. By establishing this trust, you're going to be able to do some pre-RV gifting. You can not only gift currencies to individuals prior to the revaluation to avoid the federal gift tax, but if you have this trust, it even has a mechanism where you can gift currencies to family and friends and still have control of the post-RV proceeds. And there are situations where individuals have contacted me and said, you know, I'd love to gift currencies to certain individuals, but for any number of reasons, there's no way they would be able to handle the management of such a lump sum. But if you gift through the gift sub-trust within our package, you'll be able to manage the money for their benefit and at the same time avoid the federal gift tax. This trust package will also allow you to avoid the cost and delay of probate. And in a situation of probate, it's a matter of public record, the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So you will avoid all of that public disclosure. In addition, the trust will allow you to avoid the federal estate tax, which can be as much as 65% of your entire estate in excess of $12 million. And then, of course, there are the asset protection benefits. Pre-RV, the trust package will allow you to avoid something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Very simply, you have 10 million dinar. You paid $10 million for, you paid $10,000 for it. You transfer the currencies to the trust. They subsequently revalue, let's say, for $1 to keep it simple. So now you have $10 million in trust. Can you be sued for $10 million? No. Why? Because the currencies were only worth $10,000 when you transferred them out of title to the trust, and that caps any potential civil suit to $10,000. So an individual that wants to sue you with the idea that you are worth millions subsequently learns they can only sue you for $10,000, well, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, very simply, the purpose of creating a package of trusts is so you can isolate each individual asset into a separate subtrust. This necessarily limits legal suits as well. So, for example, if someone were in one of your rental properties, they slipped and they fractured their back, can they go after all of your properties? No. Why? Because the only property that would be involved is the one that they fell. The other properties are in separate subtrusts, which under the law are separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the issue. So establishing this trust package is indispensable for any individual that has an asset that they think is going to accrete substantially in wealth. I've been doing, over the course of my career, I've worked as a insurance salesman, as an investment advisor, as a certified estate planner. I've seen every imaginable situation. I've never seen the potential for a windfall more so than the individuals that have these currencies. In addition to that, the timing couldn't be better because now we have a very intelligent, pro-business president in waiting that's going to make it all the more easier for us to build on that wealth. So the establishment of this trust is not only protecting your wealth, it's protecting the wealth for your children, for your grandchildren. Where the situation, if someone had told me 15 years ago, I'd be sitting here talking about the reinstitution, revaluation of the Iraqi dinar with the leverage that's involved in that. And a president that's coming in, he's promising, Donald Trump is promising that we will re-enter the golden age. I've mentioned this before. The golden age in America was a period of time between roughly 1880 and 1910. This is a period of time where the United States grew most dramatically in wealth, both as a nation and as individual citizens within that nation. Of course, 1913, the Federal Reserve came along, and that changed a lot of things. But I think Donald Trump has something planned for the Federal Reserve as well. But we are really on the threshold of the accumulation of wealth, the reimplementation of our freedoms, and the dramatic reduction in the size of the federal government and their intrusion into our lives. So we're really in a very, very good place. If you hold currencies, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package regarding our trust. It has everything you need to know about us, about trusts, about how they work, about why an individual that's about to accumulate a substantial amount of wealth needs to get it out of title and into trust before that day comes. I'm going to go to a brief Q&A here. Before I do, just let me give you our contact information. In order to get our trust package, you can contact us either by phone or by email. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. Again, that's 307-274-4122. Contact us by email or phone. We'll be happy to get our trust package out to you. You can review the package, contact us if you have any questions. If you wish to proceed, everything you need is included in the trust package, but you're under no obligation to proceed. That decision is entirely yours. So let's go ahead and get into the Q&A here. And one last thing I do want to mention is that when this dinar, the Iraqi dinar, does hit the Forex, think of it as a IPO where it's going to be very volatile. In other words, once it hits the Forex, a lot of people are going to buy it right away. So it's going to go up substantially in value, and then it's going to drop back down. When I was involved with the Kuwaiti dinar, it went from roughly, let's say, 346. As I recall, it may have gotten as high as $9. I think it went over $8. And a lot of people continued to buy it and buy it and buy it. And weeks later, it was down to 3-something. So after the event, people will still have an opportunity to purchase. But remember, it's going to be extremely volatile. But no one is going to have the advantage that we have because we purchased the dinar when it was virtually worthless. And so even if it comes back at $1 and do the math, as a matter of fact, a friend of mine called me today and I said, look, he's a very skeptical guy, and I made it a habit not to talk to family and friends unless they initiate the conversation because I don't want them to feel under any pressure. And I said, look, in my opinion, the dinar is going to be north of $4. So a $250 investment is 250,000 dinar, which could literally be $1 million. Of course, he said, that's not possible. I said, okay, here's the deal. I won't challenge that remark on the condition that when it happens, you don't call me and give me a hard time for not dragging you to wherever you needed to go to buy the currency. You're an adult, make your own decision. I'm just telling you, I've been at this for a long time, and I've never seen anything that comes anything close to this. And when the Kuwaiti dinar popped, I thought, wow, we'll never see anything like that again. Well, what's going to happen with the Iraqi dinar is going to dwarf anything I can imagine up to this point. But I don't want to belabor the issue. We've got some callers in the queue here. Our first caller is area code 615. That's 615. Go ahead.
Morning, Jim.
Morning.
What are you hearing anything with respect to either a simultaneous or a timing with respect to the other currencies like the dong or the rupiah revaluing?
Well, I am hearing some things about the Vietnamese dong. One of the arguments people made about when they would say the Iraqi dinar will never revalue is they pointed to the dong and they said, look at the dong. The dong's been in a program rate, for 30, 40, whatever decades. Nothing has happened there. Well, the dong was in a different situation because they were really in a closed house with China, and they did all of their trade with China. But Vietnam is breaking away from China, and incidentally, China's having serious problems. It's not discussed too much, but they are. Anyway, Vietnam is beginning to open trade to other countries, and that tells me that they see the writing on the wall, they see what's happening, and I hold a lot of dong. I would not be surprised if the dong were to revalue or reinstitute within 90 days of the Iraqi dinar, if not sooner. I think the Iraqi dinar is going to open the floodgates for a lot of currencies for various reasons that have been in program rates or geopolitically have been in a disadvantageous situation. And I think all of that's going to change because these countries want to cash in on the wealth that they have. They don't want to be constricted. Remember, China artificially devalues its own currency just to corner the trade market, and they've got trade deficits with many countries, including the United States. And that's one thing that Trump is hell-bent on ending. And the way he always talks in these terms, I think what he said was we need something about global equilibrium. What he's referring to is we want currencies to be based on basal compliance, not on these artificial things being issued by the central banks of these various countries. So I know it's long-winded what I'm saying, but I'm really bullish on the dong, and I might actually buy some more dong because, again, once the dinar pops, I really think it's going to have a domino effect, and I think the dong is the next one to go. In my opinion.
Do you have a feel for what it might come out at?
No.
Without quoting you.
I think it could probably be over $2.
Thank you.
Certainly. Okay. Bye-bye now. Our next caller is area code 843. That's 843. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Jim. How are you?
Okay. Okay, Michael. How are you?
Another day in paradise.
Yeah.
I can't express the gratefulness that I'm sure myself and many others feels for all your hard work and dedication and explanations. But I got to ask a question, sir, that may sound, shall we say, demeaning or something like that, and that's not the intent. But what I'm trying to establish is confidence here, I guess is the best thing to say. We have all heard, especially myself and yourself over the years, 20 years for me, in this quote-unquote investment, it's gonna pop in June. It's going to pop in 90 days. It's going to pop at this time. It's going to pop at that time. My question to you is, what's making you feel so confident about this upcoming January outside of what kind of you've already put out there, and what's the difference between upcoming January and previous quote-unquote predictions that have been made?
Well, there's a lot of things I could point to, but if I had to point to one, I would say Sudani. Sudani made a promise, which upon Allah, which is not something that a faithful Muslim would do. But what he's been doing two things. Number one, he's been implementing, as I mentioned, Dr. Shabibi's protocol for monetary reform, but he's doing something else. When people are pushing back, unlike previous prime ministers who kind of shrunk against the pressure, he's pushing back, and he's pushing back hard. Sudani, to me, is Iraq's version of Trump. And love Trump or hate Trump, you can't stop the guy. You just can't stop him. And that's who Sudani is. And then when we find out that Trump and Sudani had a very long conversation on the phone, so that tells me that the incoming administration and their Treasury Department is on par and in line with Iraq and what they're doing in Iraq. So, and the other issue is, of course, the United States holds, as I understand it, $4 trillion dinar. So Trump, at $4, Trump is sitting on $16 trillion right there, which is almost half of our entire deficit. So of all the reasons, to me, those are the most important ones. Trump is a get-the-job-done kind of guy, and he's coming along at the same time that Iraq has a get-the-job-done kind of guy, and he's put a backstop on it. He has said this year. So I'm just putting my faith in those two individuals.
When you say this year, you're talking about what Sudani said. Is that correct, sir?
Yes. Now, and I include January in this year. In other words, what I mean is, if he puts everything in place by December 31st and it happens to hit in January, as long as everything that needs to be done is done this year, for example, what could happen is in late December, he could just put out an announcement and say the lower denoms will all be released to the citizens on January 5th. Well, I'm just picking a hypothetical date. That, to me, he kept his promise. So he's done that all year. Every time in Parliament, anytime anyone tried to throw an obstacle in front, he steamrolled them. So, I just feel like we're finally there. Now, in the past, I've been more cautious than a lot of other people, but there have been times when I thought something was going to happen that didn't happen. But I've sat back and watched Soudani for a year, and it's just in my opinion, this guy's the real deal. He says what he means what he says, and now he's got a partner in the United States that wants to get it done too. So, they're just pushing the pedal to the metal, and in my opinion, that's where we are.
What's your take that they haven't officially canceled the dollar auctions yet? I get that they've basically stopped using the dollar amongst the citizens, but they're still having these currency auctions. That's what I think. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I think the last I saw was it last night or the night before? They were still ongoing, and there was big concern with the rise in the dollar, cost of the dollar.
And that's why I think Trump was on the phone with Soudani, because that's the last thing that's got to happen. And on his end, I mean, theoretically, Trump would need to be in office to consummate what might need to be done. But even if that's the case, the guy's had 4 years. He's probably got 300 executive orders all written in order. And the fact that he actually had a long conversation with Soudani means that the situation in Iraq is on his short list. So I think when he's going to do so much, the haters on the left, their head's going to be spinning. They won't know what to do. They're just getting hit from all sides. It's going to be it's going to be pretty epic. I'm really looking forward to it, to be honest with you. But like I said, the right people are in place. They've all been crystal clear about what their intentions are, and I don't see any pushback in Iraq or the United States at this point. So, I think even in this country, I think the left has waved the white flag. They've done everything they can, and, they've made this guy stronger, because he survived what they've done. So, that's just my view. We've reached a point of no return, in my opinion. I can't think of anything. They even tried a war, and that didn't work. So, we are where we are.
So basically, the currency auctions is the straw that'll break the camel's back, per se.
Well, it'll be the end, because neither the government nor the people, the citizens, will be utilizing the dollar at all. It'll be based entirely on the value of the IQD, and then all they need to do. As a matter of fact, there was one issues of the Gazette for some reason was stopped. I think it was 485, and there was a lot of speculation that had issues in there with regard to the deletion of the zeros and the release of the lower denoms. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I just find it suspicious that one of the editions of the Gazette was held back. And to me, it's because they just don't want to say it just yet. The Gazette may have gotten a little ahead of itself, but I just don't see anything that can stop it at this point.
Roger that. Jim, thank you very
Yes,
much again. I hope you and your family have a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yes, sir. By the way, are you military?
No, sir, but I was a private contractor.
Okay, well, you have a little military. Roger, that's kind of military. Just checking in. I have relatives in the military. As a matter of fact, some of the information I got was from a relative that was doing security work in Iraq, and he was giving me some overhearing conversations about what's going on over there. So that's where I get some of my information. I shouldn't have said that, but what the hell?
Yes, sir. I spent a couple of years as a private contractor working hand in hand with the military. So that. But
well, then you and this guy are on this. Well, Roger that. Take care, sir.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.
Oh. Next caller is area code 763. That's 763. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. It's Monty from Minnesota. Long time no chat, but obviously
yes,
I've been on your calls pretty much constantly here. Obviously, I've been in this investment or opportunity for a very long time, 7-8 years, and through those times you create relationships with like-minded people. You belong to Discord groups or keep in touch. And through all that, obviously some of them I have referred to you for trusts, and others feel that, they're going to work on their trust after it revalues, and to each their own. I'm not whatever they decide. But what I hear consistently with my friends that do not have trusts is they're not planning on making a quarterly tax payment. They're going to wait till the end of the year. So my question is it different for people that don't have trusts like us that are going to be required to make that quarterly payment after it revalues in whatever quarter the following month? Or I guess what advice would you give me to share with my friends that do not have trusts?
My advice is pay quarterly taxes on 1099 earnings. You are risking 100% penalty. Let me give you the worst case scenario. The dinar revalues, all right? You are now in the highest tax bracket. What's that, 39.6. But because you made millions, there's the millionaire surtax, another 5%. That puts you at 44.6. You don't pay the tax. What's 100% penalty on 44.6? Another 44.6. To be honest with you, anyone that plays that game, I'm just don't feel sorry for them. I just don't. Pay your taxes, invest wisely. The more money you have, the less risk you need to take. I don't know why anybody would purchase a quote-unquote speculative currency, meaning I'm going to take a risk, and then on top of that, I'm going to take another risk, and I'm not going to pay the tax. There are people that are out there saying that there is no tax on a currency exchange. That used to be the case, not anymore. You ought to tell them to look at Section 988E2 of the Internal Revenue Code, 988E2. The last sentence of that code says, if the profit that you expect to make on the exchange exceeds $200, you must pay the tax. In other words, let's say on December 26th, the day after Christmas, the dinar comes back at $1. Okay? So you have a profit there. You didn't even cash it in. You just sat on it. So at the end of the quarter, every million dinar that you purchased is now worth $1 million. So $999,000 of that million is profit. The tax for that is due on January 15th if it happened in December. It's due on April 15th if it happened in the first quarter. It's due on July 15th if it happened in the second quarter. And it's due on, again, January 15th if it's the first quarter. If they don't pay the tax is due plus 100% penalty plus interest. So, tell them to go to 988E2 and think very, very hard about rolling the dice with the IRS.
What would be another one I've heard say that they're going to file a extension for their taxes so they make sure, they're doing stuff legally and to figure out the tax implications. But when you file an extension, aren't you immediately starting to be charged interest on that?
Yes.
You could potentially
Yes. That the worst thing a person can do is spend 20 years twiddling their thumbs, waiting for the damn dinar to revalue, and then get a windfall profit and make the mind-numbingly stupid decision not to pay the tax in a timely fashion.
Yep. Very well. I know you've said that probably about 50 times similar to what you just said on a call, but I just thought I would ask again so then I can share this video with them. And, God help us, they do what they feel is best for them.
Right.
A couple other questions is – oh, go ahead.
So what I was going to say was there's two things that I try to do on my calls. One of them initially in the call is the disclaimer, and I've decided to discontinue with the disclaimer because of where we are now. And the other thing is I've repeated, say, pay the tax. Do not play games with the IRS, not only for your own sake, but I don't want anyone to tell the IRS, well, Jim George told me there was no tax, so I didn't have to pay it. I want to make absolutely sure I can go back and say, here's 100 tapes you can listen to where I told them, pay the tax. Because when this is over, I don't want any problems. I want smooth sailing in my life.
Yep, I hear you. Me as well. Two other things that I'd like to ask you on is I've heard, there's so much fake stuff on the internet and information, and, you have to see what's logical and what's not. Just looking for your opinion that once this goes, there's rumors that we could potentially get paid out and on the quantum financial system, which from my understanding is a gold-backed currency.
Yes.
Backed currency. Is that a possibility?
I would say so, because I think there are probably things that they're not talking about that'll be implemented simultaneous to this. We live in a period of time where, the AD and BC, before Christ, and Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, it's like there's a split. Well, that's kind of what's happening here. This thing is changing the game, because the implementation of Basel IV compliance, countries like Iraq, this country's been artificially devalued or put in a program rate, and then we've gone through, again, as I mentioned, the Basel compliance where all the currencies are being backed. So this is one of those, like I said, this has never happened before. It's never going to happen again. It's a seminal moment in time. We don't know exactly how this is going to play out. One of the documents that the people that get our trust get is a document called the Exchange Protocol if you have a trust, and it goes into the do's and the don'ts.
I have that.
The negotiation, what the bank's going to try to do with you. But there are those other implications. We just have to wait. And some of these things we're on the fly. We're just going to have to wait and see what they try to do. I'm hopeful that if it happens before Trump is actually inaugurated, the fact that he's there has already changed the game. We can see what's going on. They're treating him as the de facto president, and Biden's off somewhere eating ice cream. So things have already changed. So we're just in a very good place. Everything seems to be falling right into place, and this may sound counterintuitive, but I don't want to see the revaluation in December. I want to see it in January. For investment reasons, for tax reasons, for political reasons, all of that. You wait 20 years, you can't wait 2 more weeks.
I agree. Last question, and I have to hop out because I'm getting an appointment. I'm at an appointment.
Okay.
There's also talk that we could potentially be getting paid, again, rumors, I don't know, true or not, in Ripple or XRP and crypto, and what's your thoughts of crypto with Trump proposing no capital gains tax on any U.S. company, and your opinion of XRP?
I think the cryptos are going to take off. I think the Iraqi dinar is going to be an integral part of our reserve currency. All of this stuff's going to happen. With regard to the exchange, when I go into, this is just me, I'm going to go full Jed Clampett when I go in there. I'm going to say, these are my currencies. You can take that rule book and stick it in the lower drawer, because this is going to be done my way or not at all. I'll be happy to go to another bank. I don't care what I have to do. This is my money. This is my call. I don't care about your stupid rules. This is what I want. This is how I want it done. And, some people might tell me to pound sand. They may pick up the phone and call the people upstairs and say, okay, Mr. George. The other thing I'm going to say is don't take my word for it. Go to your computer, look up Trusts Unlimited. We have literally thousands of clients. Now, do you want me to get on the phone and tell them to come to your bank, or do you want me to get on the phone and tell them avoid your bank?
Right.
I'm not playing.
So do you have any opinion about the cryptos, or, I mean, it looks good?
Yeah, I actually have I have a family member. I'm not certainly won't give you his name. He bought $250,000 of Bitcoin at $8, I believe it was. So he's saying, good luck with your dinar, Jim. I'm off to the race.
Awesome. But, I need to take off. Thanks, Jim.
Sure. Okay, you take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Okay, our next caller is area code 805. That's 805. Go ahead.
Good morning, Jim. Good morning. Or
yes.
Afternoon, whichever you are. Anyway, I was wondering, on the reserve trust, who pays the taxes for those people that are going to benefit from it? Does the trust pay it, being the trust is holding it?
The trust will pay taxes on earnings that are within the trust. If they're distributed to you, then you'll pay the taxes.
Well, I mean, like, for instance, I'm holding funds for those who are unable to take care of it themselves because they don't know how to manage it. So being I'm holding it in the trust and taxes are going to be due,
then you'll pay. Yeah, that's right. The trust will pay the taxes.
The trust will pay taxes and just deduct it from the amount.
If the profit is sitting within the trust, then the trust needs to pay the tax. If the profit was distributed to the beneficiary, then the beneficiary would pay the tax.
Okay. All right. And let's see, I had one other question. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering it, so I guess we can move on. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Appreciate all you're doing.
Certainly. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye now.
Our next caller is area code 301. That's 301. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. It's Larry from Maryland. With all of the expectation coming up, do we know which banks we would be able to go to? At what point would we know which ones?
Well, I will direct you, or we'll have an email that goes out. Certainly I'll discuss it on my call. The banks, Bank of America, Chase. I would avoid Wells Fargo. I've had issues with Wells Fargo. I just don't trust them. So there will probably be, I would say, maybe about 5 banks that we could suggest. You could call several of them before you decide what bank to physically go to. Tell them what you have. Ask them what kind of a rate they've got, what the exchange fees are, things of that nature. Once they know that you're talking to other banks, they're going to at least give you the best deal they possibly can, and then to make your decision that way. Of course, I'm going to call banks, or we're going to call banks and explain, we're Trusts Unlimited. We have a number of people. What kind of an arrangement can you make if they come in with our trust? I suspect that most of our clients will be running to the bank with their hair on fire long before we're able to ascertain all of that. One of the reasons you might want to hold off is because whatever the rate is, when the dinar hits the Forex, it's going to go up. It's going to go down too, but it's going to go up before it goes down. So people may want to hold off and not exchange right away. They may only want to exchange some of it and come back later with the expectation it'll be higher. And then the other issue is when taxes are due. If this thing hits in January, then we have some wiggle room until April. If it hits now, we got to pay the taxes in January. So it's really disadvantageous for us if it happens at the end of a quarter, particularly the fourth quarter. But, we'll just have to see how the timing works when the dinar hits the Forex. That will, we'll work backwards from that and figure out what we need to do. But, I know everyone wants this over, but I just don't want to. I never want to see it in the last couple weeks of a quarter for the complications that it creates. So I'm really hopeful that it's going to happen in January. But whenever it happens, we have to respond accordingly.
And then, like in the past, I've gone to, for instance, TD Bank, where you can kind of get almost any currency from them. They're very easy to deal with. The banks, like a Bank of America, this should not be a hard concept for them. It should be a straightforward process if they're not usually dealing in foreign currencies.
The larger banks are in a better position than the medium size of the regional banks. But to be honest with you, I'd rather go to a regional bank. I wish credit unions could do it because I have accounts at big banks and I have accounts at credit unions, and the service at the credit union is much better. But they don't have the size, the equipment. They just don't have the ability to do it. We have one client that has 500 million dinar and 500 million dong. You think he could walk into a credit union and say, hey, I need to exchange some currency?
Right.
There's some. You just have to have a bank that's capable. And it doesn't mean you're going to get the best service, but if they're the only sources that have the capability of exchanging large amounts, then you're kind of stuck. But on the other hand, even the worst deal is going to be great when you think about it. I mean, people purchase dinar for nothing. Even if you exchanged it tomorrow for $1, look what you've got.
Right. So the bigger banks like the Chase, Bank of America, they should be much simpler to deal with ultimately.
Well, with Chase, J.P. Morgan, I mean, they're setting up banks in Iraq. So,
right.
It makes sense to me they'd be right on target with you. They know what's going on. You're probably going to get the best rate because they're banking in Iraq. So, we'll just have to see. Of course, the day it hits the Forex, I'm going to have a panic attack because I'm going to immediately, I got to start calling these banks. Okay, now it's not even going to be what's Jim George going to do, what's Trusts Unlimited going to do. So, I'm going whatever your panic is, your panic squared. That's where I'll be.
I mean, are some of these banks, if it's not confidential, talking with you? Are they being cooperative, or is this remains to be seen when it actually happens?
I've had bankers call me.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're in the last year. I never heard from a bank. I never even brought it up with banks. I had people come and say, I went to the bank, and I told them I had dinar, and they laughed, and they say all this. But now I've had several calls from banks asking about us. So they're being told that something's happening with the Iraqi dinar. So they're smart enough. I give them credit. Say, let's find out who's got these dinar. So they will go to these sites, go to these different sites, and then I'm sure they're talking to a lot of people, and they see Trusts Unlimited, and on my calls, I got a screen here. Every week there's 2 or 3 anonymous on there. I don't know who it is, and I don't really care. I don't care if it's the IRS. I don't care if it's Joe Biden. I don't care, because I don't say anything that I've got to worry about. So I'm just thinking that's kind of odd. All of a sudden I'm getting these anonymous calls. Maybe some of them are banks.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Certainly. All right. Take care now. Well, that was our last caller for today. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking time to listen to this call. I think we're in a really interesting time here, and I think it's going to be an interesting time in January for a number of reasons. I think that the dinar is going to hit the Forex. I think we're going to have the inauguration of a president that's really pro-America and not pro-globalist, and that's all going to be very good. For the time being, let's say I'm going to have a call next week, but if I do, I'm sure it's going to be a rather short. Well, as a matter of fact, I can't do a call next Wednesday, can I? I was thinking next Wednesday was going to be Christmas Eve. It looks like it's going to be Christmas Day, and I can guarantee you there will not be a call Christmas Day. My wife and I have 7 children, 9 grandchildren, and 1 in the oven, so it's going to be chaos and hysteria over here Christmas Day, so that's not going to be possible. So our next call will be in 2 weeks. Now, whether that's New Year's Eve or New Year's Day doesn't matter. There will be a call in 2 weeks, but there will not be a call next week. I strongly suggest that those of you that have been thinking about establishing a trust and have not proceeded, do so, because time is really short, and it's not just a matter of who has this wealth and who doesn't have this wealth. It's going to be a matter of those with the wealth who have protected themselves and those that have not. So, again, you can contact us by email or phone. We'll be happy to send you our initial no-obligation package. Everything you need is right there if you wish to proceed. We'll move as quickly as we can once we get the information. Once your trust is in force and you've signed a document assigning all of your currencies to your trust, you've done everything that any wealthy person of means and understanding the need to protect their wealth is already done. So thanks so much for listening to this call. We'll be back next Wednesday. Certainly, 2 weeks from today. But certainly if something of a dramatic nature were to happen, unless it's Christmas Day, you will hear from me. We'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back in 2 weeks on a Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. God bless all of you. Bye-bye now.